Okay, so I kind of told you in the past that I wasn't going to do or try not to do intros to the tractor series anymore, and here I am back at it again. But it's kind of really not an intro, more than an explanation about something. The start of this video is going to be about that brake valve again, and I know we've beat a dead horse to death, but there were some issues with that brake valve, and I got it resolved. I got that piston off of the shaft, and I wanted to show you not as much how I did it as how I fixed it, because after I got it off the shaft, it actually wouldn't go back onto the shaft without probably pressing it or hammering it on. So just kind of wanted to show you how I fixed it. The other issue came about that snap ring that was broken on the bottom of the piston. I tried to find a snap ring similar to that thing, and I wasn't able to do it. I got a couple of snap rings that have the holes in them so that you can use snap ring pliers to put them on or remove them, but they didn't really fit that groove very well. And I kind of look at Grainger Supply to see if I could find something, because I knew if I went to IH that it was going to probably be an expensive part, a snap ring. So I looked at Grainger, and Grainger had something that was kind of similar to it, without actually having to go to Grainger and see it in person and see if it would fit in the groove of that shaft. I didn't really know. Again, from Grainger I could have bought 25 of them for like 10 bucks. So in another part of the video, I'm going to discuss the rear end of the tractor. So I went down to my IH dealer to see again about the gasket kit for the rear end of the the tractor. Did I say tractor before, or trailer? Tractor. I went down to see about a gasket kit for the rear end, and the guy says, well, we don't really have gasket kits. And the way he said it, I had never thought of this before. I says, well, do you have the individual gaskets? And he says, yeah, we have can sell you the individual gaskets, but we don't have a gasket kit. Now, I'd asked a couple of other people before about gasket kits, and they never said, well, we've got individual gaskets, but we don't have a gasket kit. But regardless, I got a gasket for that, and at the same time, I asked about those snap rings for the shaft of the brake valve. And yes, they did well, they didn't have them, but they could order them for me, and they were over $7 a piece. So I ended up buying them, bought the gasket and buying them, but you'll see that in the video, and I'll explain that, explain all of it to you in the video. So here we go. One of the things I wanted to show you is I knew that that bottom part of the shaft on this brake valve had to be sealed somehow. And if you can see it, there's an O-ring right in there. That's going to be kind of a task to get that new O-ring in there, but I'll get it. But I knew that that shaft had to be sealed somehow. So anyways, I found it, and we can continue on. I still haven't gotten that piston off the rod, but that's the next thing that I'm going to do. I'll bring you back. What I have is, I have this brass hammer, fairly large brass hammer. What I've done is just tighten the vise up around, not tight to the shaft, just kind of snug. And it's just fight me the entire way. Not really sure what it is. It was rough though. I'll take it over to the grinder and clean up that the end of that thing a little bit. But at least I got it off of there. What I did is put half of this part of the piston in the lathe, I'm just it fits tight down into that other half of that piston. So I'm just going to I've got a very thin strip of emery cloth. I don't know what grit it is, but it's pretty fine. I'm going to say probably around 120 or so. I'm just going to spin it and lightly buff that edge off so that it fits into that piston and doesn't hang up anymore. And I chucked it really light just so that it wouldn't score it at all, the jaws. I'll take it over and try it in there. So there it is, and it fits in there good. I mean, you got to get it in there straight for it to go down in, but it fits in there good. Okay, at least I can get this thing rebuilt now. What I did is I took the shaft over and put it in the lathe and just cleaned it up with a Scotch-Brite pad, but it still doesn't fit in there right. I'm really not sure what's going on with it. If you take the other one, it slides right on there. It's a nice fit, but I'm not getting that with this other thing. I'm going to take over the parts washer, clean it up, take a look at that bore in there and see what's going on with it, why it won't go in there, but I'll bring it back. This is just a shot of the lathe looking down at the tailstock, and what I have in the tailstock is a reamer. What I couldn't do is I could not get this I couldn't get, after I put the shaft in the lathe, I buffed it off with a Scotch-Brite pad. I really didn't want to turn that shaft down. So what I did is I had a 1/2-inch reamer. Now, machinists can get precision reamers in different sizes, and I had a 1/2-inch one laying around, and that happens to be what size the shaft is. It's a 1/2 inch. Well, it's actually a little bit over a 1/2 inch. It's like 1/1000ths over a 1/2 inch. But anyways, it wouldn't fit in there after I buffed it down. So what I did is I grabbed the reamer, stuck the piston bore into the chuck of the vise very gently, and ran the reamer through, and as you can see, it goes in now. So what there was is a burr or something inside of there that was hanging that shaft up. So that's how I fixed it. Now, you don't have to have a reamer. I happen to have a 1/2-inch reamer around, so I used it. I mean, you could have done the same thing with a little flap disc on a end grinder, stuck it through there. You're underneath the rear end housing of the tractor. One of the things I've got to do is get this 1/2-inch plug out of here. As you may know from a previous video, I tried to get a socket on it, and it had been rounded out before. So not a socket, but what it was is a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter. But the inside had been rounded out before, and when I tried to remove it, it just rounded it out more. I got the other side out, and I got the middle plug out, but this one I can't get out. Now, one of the things that I'm debating about is just drilling it, draining the oil out, and then taking a 1/2 inch pipe extractor and pulling it out that way. Sometimes you can take a little chisel and be able to get it out also, but you know, I did it in the piping industry. I pulled a lot of threads out of fittings. That way, threads where the pipe had broke off in a fitting and extracted the remainder out of the fitting. I've done that a lot using a chisel and a hammer and just working the thread out of there. The only thing with this is you got a cast iron housing around it, and if you damage it, you're kind of screwed. I mean, I could always drill it out bigger if I did damage it, drill it out bigger and put like a 3/4 inch plug in there. There's enough room between the edge of the that axle housing and the main body of the housing to get a 3/4 inch plug in there if worse came to worse, but I really don't want to get into that. So let me see what I can do here, and I'll bring you back on. So this is the rear end of the tractor, and as you can see over there on the engine stand, I'm sorry, the engine lift hoist, the transmission is still sitting there. And I just kind of showed you a clip of underneath this housing, that 1/2 inch plug that I need to remove and need to get the oil out of that housing. One of the things that I'm doing is I've really been procrastinating about putting the transmission back onto the rear end. And the reason why I've kind of been procrastinating about it is a couple of the viewers has mentioned to me that I should really, as long as I've got it apart this far, that I really should take that top plate off of there and take a look inside at the bearings and check the gear, backlash, etc. on that rear end. And one of the reasons why I didn't do that to begin with is because haven't found, let me rephrase and say I haven't found a gasket kit for the rear end yet. So what I'm going to do, I have that issue with the brake valve, that shaft, and that snap ring or snap clip that goes over and holds that piston onto the shaft. Now I have found some snap rings that will fit onto there, but they're not as heavy as that original snap ring, and they're not the same style. So I think what I'm going to do today is go down to my local IH dealer, see if they can get me the snap ring, and also at the same time see if they have a gasket kit or can get a gasket kit for the rear end. if they can get a gasket kit for that rear end, or for this rear end, or if they have a gasket kit for the rear end, I am going to pull that thing apart. I'm going to pull it apart and just take a look in there and kind of check backlashes against tolerances in the manual, check bearings and stuff like that, and at least that won't be in the back of my mind always. You know, you should have done it while you had the opportunity, and I've been really procrastinating about doing this, and I've just got to bite the bullet and do something. You know what I mean? Whether it be, if I can't get the gasket kit, I really hate that Insta gasket stuff that you kind of spread on and use. So if I can't get a gasket kit from them, I'm probably just going to stick the transmission back on. If I can get a gasket kit from them, then what I'm going to do is tear the 3-point hitch off and take that top plate off the seat post, and it's got the splitter valves for the hydraulics on the back underneath the seat. I'll take all of that apart and pull that top plate off and take a look at that, what's going on in the rear end of this thing before I go and put the transmission back into it. So that's kind of where I am. I'm just kind of waiting for somebody to show up at the shop, and as soon as he's come and gone, I'm gonna head down and see what they have as far as that snap ring goes and a gasket kit for this rear end. So I'll bring you back. Okay, just let me, I'm gonna insert a little clip here. Twice, what I did is I went out and bought the gasket, and you're gonna see that next. But twice I have been to my local IH dealer, and twice I've tried to film their lot. Now they have a lot that's probably between, I don't know, 5-7 acres big, where they have machinery on it, tractors, plows, discs, rakes, tethers, everything. But anyways, I started the camera down there and was driving around the lot and explaining to you about the gasket and those snap rings for that brake valve, and this is the second time it's happened. I get back to the shop and go to upload that video, and for some reason the camera shut off, and both times it's happened, the camera, it started and the camera shut off. I don't know whether the place is jinxed or not, but anyways, we're going to go to a video of me having the gaskets and me explaining about this. Okay, so as I talked about in the previous video, or previous clip of the video, there is the seat post gasket. And I ordered those retainer rings. So the gasket was $38.50 and those retainer rings are $7.37 a piece. So I knew they were going to be expensive. Again, I can fit 2 of them snap rings onto this thing. But it would always be in the back of my mind whether those snap rings were going to hold up or not. Now, when I say 2 of the snap rings, I think I discussed that before. The snap rings that have the holes in the end where you can use snap ring pliers on them, I can get 2 of them to fit on there. I cannot find the 2 of these snap rings right there. I could not find something compatible on an aftermarket, well, off-market, not a IH product. You know, I could have gone to Granger and bought probably 25 of them for I think it was $10-12, and IH is charging $7, but they were not the same thing. And again, you know, it'd always be in my mind, is that thing going to hold up? Is it going to, you know, hold that piston in place? So as long as I was down there getting the gasket, I got that. They didn't have the snap rings, but I ordered 2 of them just so that I would have another one, just in case. So anyways, there's that. The tractor. I'm going to start pulling the seat post plate off. Well, there's a lot of preparation work that goes in pulling that seat post plate off. You know, I got to disconnect all the hydraulic lines. I got to disconnect the parts of the 3-point hitch. A bunch of stuff. Probably leave those shifters on there, or the hydraulic levers on there. But again, I got to get the hydraulic lines disconnected and the 3-point hitch disconnected off of it before I can pull that off. So that'll probably be the next video, is me starting that.